I plan on doing some variations on these forms. Katura offered up doing a tripod where instead of doing 2 cut corners like we did on this one, do them in 3 cut corners, which might be pretty interesting. I'll probably try that next time I throw some of these forms. And that'll give a little bit more uniqueness to, instead of copying someone's form, which is how I tend to learn. Copy the form and then make variations to bring out your own unique identity. So I'm just going to also push this. This helps not only smooth out those canvas marks from the table, but pushes this in a little bit and helps with the raising up of the form. Okay, and you can see the 4 feet fairly well there. And what I'm going to do now is come back and cut all this extra clay off. One of the reasons why I'm making this form for the first time on video is because I learn a lot by teaching, and I think this, even though I'm basically talking to myself, this conversation about what I'm doing helps me to remember the basics of what I need to be doing and kind of point out any mistakes that I'm making if I verbalize it and say things instead of looking at stuff with just my internal dialogue. It's often not the best either critic or supporter. A lot of times it's true that you're your own worst critic. So. Just, you can see I'm removing all this extra clay from the outside here. And then we'll come through with a metal rib and just smooth out those edges, compressing it a little bit more along the edge to make a better seal. At this point, I'm not worried about all these clay bits. We could smooth them out, but I'll go back over with a sponge here in a minute after I'm done with this. But just kind of keeping this at a curve like that so that we're mimicking the soft edge that we had from when we threw it. Okay. So now the sponge, once again just a damp sponge, will smooth out all these rough edges and little boogers of clay that are left on there. Okay, and now to flip it back over, this will help even out those feet, because most likely if I just set this pad on here, it won't leave, it left impressions on 3 of the feet, but not this 4th one over here. So by flipping it over, kind of pushing down a little bit, and you can see that profile underneath there, how it raises it up off the table, or the bat in this instance. Gives it a nice curve. And this cut part here gives it a nice real lift off, and also a place to grab it if you want to pick it up and move it. Next step is to just take a soft brush and kind of run it across the coil, not the coil, where we scored and slipped it on the edge here, where the two pots, where the two pieces of clay join. You could, if you wanted to, add a coil of clay in here. I don't think I'm going to, because I think I had a pretty good seal by scoring and slipping both sides of it. You can see it's not quite symmetrical there, which once again is fine with me. Katura might have an issue with it since she's more of a refiner than I am. I'm more of a, this is good enough, we'll work with it and use that to help make the pot more unique. And she's more of a, the vision in my mind is what I need to have on the come out. So what I'm going to do now is just push out on the side here to kind of belly it out a little bit. So I'm just using the sponge and I'm just kind of pushing in a wiping motion. To belly it out a little bit. This just gives it a little bit more volume. You just want to be careful of anything cracking, which is why I'm using the sponge, because it brings with it a little bit of water. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, just a little bit. Just to kind of flare the top out. Just wipe off the inside. So what I think I'm going to do now is cut another semicircle from here to here, just a shallow cut, just to mimic this undercut here on the bottom, because it's look a little awkward if it was the curved flowing look on the bottom and then at the top straight and very structured looking. So I'm just going to do a shallow cut from side to side. Try to get it pretty close on both. But again, not overly concerned with the symmetricalness of it. I'll do two here on the corners too. Just once again to mimic the foot of this, where it kind of does the same. I don't know, kind of like an ocean wave, a swell and a crash. So I'm just doing this to smooth out those rough edges I made. This is a porcelain clay. I don't think I mentioned that in the other video. So there's no grog in it. So normally if you were working with the stoneware and you did this, it would bring out a lot of grog, which is just tiny like sand inside the clay. It gives it structure and helps you make larger and more stable things, I guess. Porcelain, as long as you know what you're doing with it, you can do the same thing, but a lot of beginners find it difficult to work with porcelain because it is so, it's not a very forgiving clay. Stoneware is a much more forgiving clay, as well as an earthenware is a much more forgiving clay than porcelain. So there'll be a little bit more cleanup on these, just the rough edges and odd corner. But overall, this is what the finished form will look like. And the next time you see it will probably be either while we're glazing it or after it's come out of the kiln. And hopefully it'll look fairly nice and will be filled with candy sitting on someone's shelf or table at some point in the future. Have a good day.